But you can never walk alone.
But you can never walk alone. On the way to being free.
Where are you? But you can never walk alone. On the way to being free. Where are you? Where are you? But you can never walk alone. On the way to being free.
Yo, welcome to this week's vlog, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Let's just get right into it. So this week, I'm going to show you guys how to pull apart S13 and 180SX tail lights. So I kind of jumped the gun a little. Earlier in the week, I had done one of the S13 and one of the 180SX tail lights, so I knew what I was in store for before I showed you guys in the video. And if I made any mistakes, now I can correct them and I can show you guys what not to do. So this is the 180SX tail light from earlier in the week. As you can see, I've pulled off the indicator and the brake light. Now this glue is really sticky, so don't be surprised. Factory glue right there. Don't be surprised if it gets really stuck when you're doing this. You've got to work pretty fast when doing these. So underneath the 180SX tail lights, we've got lens diffusers, which are these. I've already pulled these out, but because I put these back in, they're pretty sticky and they're really hard to get out. I still have to clean the residual glue off the lenses and off the housings. But I'm leaving this on so I can show you guys, and then we will work on cleaning up the housings and making the lenses for the replacements in future. So I'm trying to get this off one hand without breaking it. Like I said, the glue is really sticky. So once the lens diffusers are off the 180SX tail lights, we are left with this housing here. Now the housing, when you first do this, you're going to find these things in your housing. They slid into the tail light housing themselves, and what they did was diffuse the light better and probably stop the tail light from melting if it got hot. Alright, so that is the 180SX tail light. Now it's still got the backing on it. When you do this, pull off the center backings that the lights mount into. We don't want any of that. We don't want the little nuts left on there. You want to try and pull off as much as you can. When you first pull these out of the car, you're going to find a lot of this residual factory glue. You can see down here, I've tried getting most of it off. It is really sticky, even after 20 years. It's made to be like that because what that is water sealant for the tail lights. So it stops water from getting into the back of your car. For the purpose of making molds, I need to get all this off. I've left a little bit on there so I can show you guys what it looks like, and it is a big pain in the butt, so when you're cleaning that off, you gotta be careful because it goes everywhere. Also with the taillights, you can see all the residual glue is still in the taillight. So when you heat this up, it goes transparent, and that's when you know that you can get it out. It also goes quite soft and sticky. At the moment, it is really hard and it's opaque. So it makes a mess also. The S13 tail. So the S13 tail, surprisingly, was a little more complicated than doing the 180SX tail light. So the 180SX tail light is pretty easy to pull apart because it's quite short. So when I was doing the S13 tail light, it's quite long, so I had to be careful not to crack it. As you can see, I did crack it right here. It's a hairline crack, but it's enough that I now need to repair it to do a mold off. I now have to fix that before I mold a lens. However, we are not talking about molding lenses with you guys. I'm just talking about removing tail lights so you guys can make your own tail lights. So we have our indicator. The indicator was pretty easy to get out. It was a lot more pleasant than obviously getting out the big red bit. And the tiny little reverse lens. Here is the S13 tail housing. Unlike the 180SX tail lights, they don't have the lens diffusers like this. They are just a hollow housing. It still has all the residual glue in here. They're a little bit more pleasant to pull the lens out of because they bend a lot and they flex. They've got a lot of movement. These tail lights are pretty soft plastic, so you don't have to worry too much about cracking these. However, you do have to worry about melting them. They will melt quite easily if you're putting them in the oven on the metal grills. Thus, we have pieces of wood. So get yourself 2 pieces of wood or a chopping board. If you do get a chopping board to put in the oven though, make sure it's not glued together because the glue will come apart and you'll ruin the chopping board. So again, when you're doing the S13 tail lights, pull out the back housings. Don't leave any of the wiring in here. Clean up the goop, so the water resistant sealant that goes on the back of the tails. I don't know how it goes, but I really just did not want it melting into my oven or on the table, or when I'm working with it. It's really unpleasant to try and maneuver and deal with these tail lights and move them around to get the lenses out if my hands are getting covered in goop all the time. So yeah, fun fact, make sure you clean them. It's a lot easier that way. And third and finally, I have not done the center garnish of the 180SX yet. However, I've got one here to practice on, so I've got a bit of damage on the front here. This doesn't matter for me to do my molds, so I'm not going to worry too much about it, and I'll just use it as a tutorial to show you guys how to get these out, because it'll be the first time I'm trying to get this out as well. Going off this, I'm going to say the red bit is one separate bit, and little reverse lights are a separate lens, so that might be a little different to get out. I have had a quick look at this. It looks like this is held in by clips. It might not actually have much glue, if any, on it at all, but it's quite hard to get into the back of these to push out, so we'll see how we go. Alright, now for the fun part. You're probably asking, how do I do this? First things first. You want to come down? Everything is trolling me right now. Thank you, dishwasher. First things first you want to do, set your oven. Now, when I done the first set of these, I found the best temperatures to use was between 180 and 220 degrees. Now, you don't want to leave the tail light in the oven for too long. You just want to leave it in there long enough to warm up the glue and to get that glue really sticky so you can pull out the lenses and start prying. So first things first, turn your oven on. Start with about 180. And I put mine on to fan cook, that way it would just pump the heat around the oven. If it's on bake, when I was doing the S13 ones, I couldn't actually shut the oven door, so the oven door was open. So the fan is probably the best to get the heat dispersed across the tail light the most. Now, things you'll need for this job, make sure you have a couple of rags. I've got 2 here. Now, these are not only just for the goop and pulling the lenses out, but when you pull that tail light out of the oven, it is going to be very, very hot. So it is the best way that you can handle the tail light without burning yourself. And also, you will need it to clean your screwdrivers. So get yourself several screwdrivers. You'll probably need 3 to 4 flatheads and 1 Phillips head. Now, the reason you need a Phillips head is because inside the 180SX tail lights and the S13, there are little screws that will hold the lens in as well. So we have a screw hole here, and we have another screw hole. So I'm just trying to find it right here. So you can see the lenses have a slight bump in them. So when you do pull the lenses out, the lenses themselves do have those little screw holes in them. When you're making new lenses to put back into these, if you're making clear lenses or your own lenses, don't worry about the screws, just worry about finding a nice sealant and bend it in and seal it. The screws, yeah, the surplus. I don't see them being needed for much. Alright, yes, so we have a couple of rags. I've got 2 flatheads and a Phillips head screwdriver. Now I have 2 pieces of wood. Now, optimally, find a plank or something thin. This is not the best kind of wood to be using. I'm just using it because it's all I had laying around. But it is enough that when I put my tail light in the oven, I can sit it on the wood and it won't burn my tail light. When I done the first tail lights, I did find this problem. I was trying to avoid it, but I was also being pretty lazy and I just didn't bother with the wood and figured it would be okay. It will not be okay. Don't trust it. Get yourself some wood and don't do it twice. You don't have to go through the hassle of burning your tail lights. I ended up melting a bit of the grill into one of the tail lights. So you can see just here, I've melted a little bit of the top of the tail light here, and I think I melted the underneath as well. Yes, I did, when I was sitting the tail light in the oven. So I don't want to do that again because I need to make molds off these. Yeah, avoid that. You've learned from my mistake, so now you don't need to make that mistake. Alright, so I forgot to mention this earlier, but get yourself a big towel, a face washer, a hand towel, or a rag, or even a tea towel. But you need something with a bit of fluff, so probably go for a microfiber, something that's got good cushioning, so when you're putting your tail light on the table to move it around and to maneuver it, you're not going to scratch all the lenses. Yeah, that's pretty much all you need. Find yourself a nice big work area to do this. If you live with your parents, they will probably go if you do this in the kitchen with a chopping board or in their bench in their oven. You can also use a heat gun for these. However, I found the oven dispersed the heat a lot better than using a heat gun, and it was a lot easier to work with the oven. I do have a heat gun, but I'm not going to use that method for today. So we got our tools, we got our tail lights, and we're preheating the oven. When you first start doing this, give the tail lights a good clean down, get that residual water sealant off the back of the tail so it's not going to get in the way and it's not going to get all over your hands. Don't have to get it all off. I haven't had dramas with it melting in the oven yet, but I can't guarantee what it's going to do if you do it. So it's just best clear as much of it off as you can and worry about sealing that back on the car later. So to start with my tail lights, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the back of these housings, which I have already done. Pre-ready. I'm going to get my Phillips screwdriver and I'm going to take out the screws that are holding the back of the lenses in. So there are 4 screws to get out of the S13 tail light. The first one is here. Now our second one is here. I've already got these out, so I apologise, but I didn't want to waste any time. And our third one is here, inside the lens. Our fourth and final one is right on the edge up here. So that one's very important to get out, because if you don't get that out and you try and pull these lenses out, you'll snap the edge of these lenses off, because these lenses go further back into the tail to about here. So you can't just pry them out and they'll come out. You have to kind of pull them out the same way that they were put in, on an angle. Now while we're waiting for the oven to heat up, I'll show you the screw locations on the 180SX tail light. So again, make sure you pull the backings off these tails. Now you will not be able to get these clear diffusers out until you get the lenses out. So don't worry about trying to access them from the back or anything like that. Get off your goop, get off your nuts. I've left these ones on here for now, just so I knew where they were. I'll pull them off before I throw them in the oven. The amount of screws on the 180SX tail light, there are 8 screws in total on the back of this tail light holding this lens in, holding these lenses in. So do make sure you remove all of them and have a good look over to make sure you haven't missed any. I'm going to show you the locations of these screws so you don't break anything. So our first couple, we've got one here, so there's 2. We have a third one up the top here. Now this one's always pretty hidden, usually spider webs or rust or something, so 3. Our fourth one is in the lens just in here. Our fifth, just here. Now 6, 7 and 8 are on the edge, fairly easy to get to, well, very easy to get to. 1, 2 and 3 up here. So that is our 8. Now you can see that is a lens diffuser like I showed you earlier. One of the aluminium ones, sorry, the heat resistance ones, or the ones that bounce light around, I don't know. Alright, now you'll also notice, just a fun little fact, so you have these little panels on the 180SX tail. I have pulled these off on the first time I tried this. There is nothing under there really to worry about to pull out. It's just kind of on there for some reason, I don't know. So there is nothing in there. It is literally just a little empty pocket for weight saving or something. I'm not sure, maybe to save on plastic or the weight of the tail light. Now these will probably be covered in goop. I'm not sure what they do. I have pulled one off to see what it was or see if there was any screws under it that was going to hinder me trying to get this apart. There isn't, so don't worry about them. Well, it looks like there's 4, sorry. So we've got 1, 2, 3 and 4. So there's 2 on each side of the 180SX. I don't think the S13 one had any form of those. No, it did not. So I have not prepped this 180SX tail light at all, so what I'm going to have to do now is clean off this goop and show you exactly what I meant by how sticky and gross it is and how much of a pain it is to get off. I've grabbed a couple of these just to wipe my hands, so I'm not dirtying the rags too much, because if I'm using these to pull the tail lights in and out of the oven, I don't want to put that black sticky stuff everywhere. So that's why I said it's probably good to have several rags or several cloths to wipe your hands, and to also wipe the screwdrivers when all the goop gets stuck, and the glue will get stuck onto the screwdrivers. It'll go hard and it'll be very hard to get off without warming it back up again. Alright, so let's start. Let's get all this goo off first. Now this is a pretty gross process, so if you're doing this, probably do it outside, not in your kitchen bench. Now it's been on here for like 20 years and it's still pretty gross, so. If you grab it, it will stick to your hands straight away. That's why I'm trying to use a screwdriver so I minimize as much contact as I have with it. Very rarely will it pull off neatly either. Another handy tip for doing this as well is probably get yourself some sandwich bags so you can put all your tools into it. So all your excess nuts and all your excessive screws that are going to come out of these taillights. Because if you put these back in, you don't want to have to lose them and try and find things that don't fit. Being automotive and being Japanese, they can be a bit of a pain to try and find replacements for at auto shops. I know that a lot of auto shops get Imperial stuff, or the big gold nuts and washers and screws, and it's always a pain trying to find something so niche with the little washer on it. So these are really cool. They've got like little washers and bits on the inside, so you don't want to lose these if you can help it. I could find one on the kitchen floor. Got it. There will be 4 nuts on the 180SX tail lights. On the S13 you have 5. You can probably hear bubbles or running water in the background. That is because we have a lot of fish tanks in the background, and this is in the kitchen, so I just have to work with what I've got. I can't take the oven to the garage. So good tip, once you've got all this goop off, give your bench a wipe down, because if you put a hot object back on this bench and any residual black sealant is on that, it is going to melt onto the tail lights and it makes it very difficult to get back off. Okay, so we have all that goop off. Now I'm going to get those screws out. So there's 8 screws in total. So I actually went out and bought a couple of extra pairs of tail lights to do this, because I wasn't too sure how it was going to go to start off with, and I didn't want to ruin my original tail lights. So try and find a spare set of these and do it to a spare set. That way if you break them, you're not going to be upset about breaking your tail lights. This lucky last top rusty one. They're pretty good though, because it's going into plastic. You won't really have dramas with it stripping, or any dramas with getting these out. If it was a metal tail light, I'd probably be worried. Okay, with the 180SX tail lights, it's not a big drama because you have a black plastic bit in the middle of the tail here. So you can see it in this one. There is a better example. So you've got this nice little plastic, a rib kind of in there. So that'll separate the 2 lenses. It's also pretty alright to pry off, so you're not going to break any lenses to get it out. However, the S13 tail light does not have that little rib I'm talking about. So now the reason I'm telling you this, so to show you a bit better with the GoPro, here's the red one. So you can see the edges here are nice and smooth. However, with the reverse one, and with the indicator, so the reverse, you can see there's no lip on the top there, but you can see down the bottom here you have a small lip. But again, there's no lip on the top here, but there's a lip right here. So this sits on the tail light like this because it does not have that little black bit. Alright, so make sure with S13, it's really important, the red has to come out first, followed by the orange, followed finally by the reverse light. And the reason for this is because all of these have little edges on the lips of the lenses, and if you don't pull them out in the right order, you'll break all the lenses. Okay, let's get to the fun part. Here's another quick tip also. I learned this because it's the first one I've done, so now you know not to do it. But when you're prying these tail lights out, you've got to be careful that you don't break them, snap them, or once you've got them really hot, that you're not pulling back on them while they're still wedged in really, really hard. The reason for that is you will disfigure the lens if you want to reuse it. It's not a big problem, you can reheat it and then bend it back, however this is what happens. So you can see my lens here has got this nice big kink in it here, and I've also cracked off the inside there, so see my finger. So this happened because when I had the tail light in the housing, we've got this back part here. So this back part here, like I said, goes in and under the tail light a lot more than what you think it does. So to pull it out, you can't just pry the tail light lens out like this. You actually have to pull it out like that, on that angle. Same with the S13, both of them seem to have a bit of excess that go underneath the plastic of the tail light, so you can't just wedge them, you'll snap that. Okay. Now this is where things get fun. So I'm going to throw this in the oven. Now the timings for this, like I said, I've got the oven set on 180 degrees up to 220, depending on how quickly I want this to heat up. Because this is still cold and I haven't heated this up yet, I'm going to heat it up at around the 180, and I'm going to leave it in there for about a minute or so. Once it's hot, I might jump it up to 200 to 220. Play around with the temperatures. They're not set in stone. Just whatever works for you, use that, and just keep a good eye on these tail lights. Make sure when you do put them in the oven, you're placing them down on your wood, so you're not going to burn those tail lights and you're not going to melt the housings. Alright, so let's get to it. You can probably also pull out these extra trays. I didn't bother because the tail lights fit, but tell I don't spend much time in here. Place my wood in there. Now, because the fan force is going from the back to the front, and I want to heat up the tail lights, not necessarily the back of the tails crazily, I'm going to put facing forwards. Now, the tail light itself is not hitting on anywhere in the oven. That's probably an important part, otherwise you'll melt the tail light. Probably, I don't know, about a minute, but I'm going to just check the tail light just because. Alright, so I was just feeling the temperature of the lens versus the plastic housing, just to see how it's going and if it's ready to be pulled yet. It could probably go with another 20 to 30 seconds. It's very hot. I didn't need to use the T-tail this time because I know where to grab. Just don't grab the front, it'll be quite hot. The back here, on these little housings is quite okay, but be aware that it's going to be really hot, so if you do grab it and you grab them too hard, you'll disfigure the mold because the mold will melt. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do, get my flat blades, and I'm just going to try and pry from the edge here. Now when I'm doing this, I'm trying to be really careful. It's hot. You want as many screwdrivers as you pretty much can, so you can wedge and do this slowly. Once you get this started, it's pretty easy to get this up, but I would recommend running a screwdriver down underneath the lens in the guts to break the glue free of the tail light, the lens. Don't swing on these too much because you will snap the outside of the tail light. Sorry, I keep saying tail light, you know I mean lens. If I say tail light, you guys know I mean lens. Just be careful. There we go. So, I'm going to show you this end because this is where it gets tricky. I'm getting my screwdriver here and I'm running it down through the center here to break off the glue, because the glue is very, very sticky. Now when I'm pulling this out, I'm going to pull it out this way. So I'm pulling it up and out. I'm not bending it back and trying to lever on it, because if I do, I will break the tail light. And voila, the lens is out. We have a nice diffuser plate. I think that comes off. The other one didn't have one. Alright, well yeah, we have a plastic thing. Not sure what it's for. And, okay. So you can see now that the lens here, it's quite gooey. It's nice and easy to get out because it's still quite hot. However, it's going to go cold really quickly and it'll be really hard to get out. So while this is still hot, I'm going to pull this lens out. Oh wow, okay. That explains why we had... Alright, so I'm going to show you something really cool. I just found this out too, so this is... I'm going to show you something really cool. I did not notice this on the other lens. So this is just a left-hand lens thing. So the right-hand lens, we have a full diffuser. The left-hand lens, we have a half diffuser, and we have a little plastic thing on the inside of this lens here. That's really cool. I did not know that. I wonder why that is. So, unfortunately then that means that we can't just use these as diffusers and run your own clears over the top. You'll have to probably pull them out completely and put your own complete clear lens in, or whatever lens color you're doing. Sweet, okay, well. But this glue is setting really quickly. I want to try and get this glue out before it goes really rock solid, because when you put in another lens, you don't want that glue sitting in there, because it'll just it'll make it hard to put your new lens in. And this is already going pretty hard. You see there, it's now no longer super gooey. It's gooey enough that I can still pull it off with my hands, but not great. I'm not going to bore you guys with me pulling the glue out. I'll do this in my own time. However, we still have the indicator still on the 180SX tail light, so we are going to do the exact same process that we just did with the first tail light, and we're going to pull that out. Quick tip before you go in and do before you do the next one, clean off your screwdriver so it's got no glue on it, because by the time you get this back out of the oven again, that glue will be set like a rock, and it'll be like trying to pull concrete off a screwdriver. Alright, back in the oven. So because we've already got one out and it's quite hollow, the heat will go through it a bit better. So I'm going to put this in for maybe a minute, but it's still about on 200 degrees. That was so much easier than the first time I done this, and I didn't damage the housing or anything. It was great. So get my screwdrivers out of the way. I'm going to reset my workspace so I'm not working with clutter or in a hurry, or I'm going to mess anything up. I've got my screwdrivers, I've got my rag. Just clean my towel off, throw the excessive glue in the bin. Going to have a beer. You can have anything you want as long as it's a Corona. Who's excited? I'm excited. So this first half of the video, I'm showing you how to disassemble these tail lights. Coming in the next few weeks, I am actually custom making my own epoxy resin clear tail light housing. So I've got to mold the lenses and then make my own lenses. That way I can use clears and I can use whatever color I want. And I can also produce my own tail lights. However, because you guys are doing DIY, you don't need to do that. Just get yourself some, you know, the fluorescent lighting plastic covers you get. So the ones you see in schools and stuff, just get some of that. It's already malleable, it's pretty bendy, and all you need to do is cut it out to the right shape. Use your old ones as a template, and then Sikaflex in the new ones. And that's pretty much it. Can't wait to make my own tails though. I've got a lot more prep I need to do to be able to make these, because I want to make them pretty much very, very similar to these. Nice and smooth on the outside, and nice and textured on the inside. That way we'll get that nice kind of retro diffusion going on. Otherwise, if I just done a clear tail light, this still has that nice diffusion to it. But if I just done like a clear, like this, I don't know. I think it would just be a little boring, maybe look a little cheap, probably look a bit too much like eBay tail lights. Okay, let's get this tail light out. Alright, that is definitely a lot hotter than the first time, because the heat has been able to go through the tail light a lot easier. So use your rags, don't burn yourself. So the way I done this one the last time I done this, I'm going to do it again just because it was easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hand through the inside of the tail light here, and I'm going to push on the back of the lens, because the indicator lens doesn't really have that same lip on it that the stop light did. Turn my tail over, something down so I can grab the tail, stuff my rag in there, and push that lens out. Now I'm not trying to push too hard because I don't want to break the tail light lens. I'm just trying to dislodge the glue enough that I can then pry it with a screwdriver. You also have to remember that you've got those plastic things in there as well, those clear ones. Ugh, I'm getting stuck to by the glue. Sorry, it's going to be a bit hard to show you guys for a second. Okay. Now again, make sure you're being really careful with this. You can damage these very, very easily, and they are 20 years old, so they will be brittle. Thankfully I've superheated my tail light, so I'm not having to worry too much about it. Still trying to be careful. So you can go further down the tail and just wedge it up as you're going. But if the tail light's not hot enough, there's the possibility that you can crack the plastic. So go from the end and lever it up like this. Now remember, when you're doing this, break the glue, break the seal. As you can see, the indicators also have their own little plastic clips in there. That is the Phillips head. Whoa, that's nice and hot. So I'm lifting and prying as I'm going, nice and gentle. Now there's no guarantee you'll get this on the first time, so don't worry, don't rush it, don't try and get it out straight away. Just work it slowly so you don't break anything. And voila, lens out nice and clean, no broken edges, and lens diffuser. Now this is glued in as well, but it's not glued in by much, it's just spot welds. Oh, sorry, spot glue. So you won't have to worry too much about it. And there you have it. The 180SX tail light is now hollow and good to go. I have my lenses. They're all perfect, no bends. So I did learn something good from my first one, which was great. I might have screwed it up, but I can fix it, and I don't need to use it to put them back together, so it's not a big loss. That is actually quite interesting. So I was talking about the diffuser plates in the first tail light. So the driver's right-hand side tail light had all these little diffuser plates in them. However, the left-hand tail light has this nice big diffuser here. And there's another one up the top here. I left that in there because I don't see any need to get that one out. However, this one blocks off a lot, and it's actually quite interesting because that is the reason that the tail light is in a half. I really wonder what that's for. If you know what that is for, or you have a friend that works for Nissan, ask them that question. Why is there a difference in the tail light? It's quite interesting. Alright, so before this cools all the way down, I'm going to get my screwdriver and I'm going to just dig out as much glue as I can, so when I put a new lens in there, I've got plenty of room to 6-flex it down. Alright, so there is my housing. It's clean, it's out, it's done, my lenses are out. I now have what I need to make my own custom lenses, or to replace my lenses and put in my own. If you are making your own custom lenses, don't worry about pulling off your plate here or your plate here. I think it's on there for some reason, who knows. Nissan decided it goes on there. And you just need to use your indicator to make your own custom lens out of plastic. You could use clear, you could use perspex, you could have a look through the lighting section of your local hardware shop. You'll be surprised at what kind of options you might have to make a lens out of, instead of having to try and make one from scratch. Alright, so that is our 180SX tail light done, so now we are going to move on to our S13. So unfortunately I've run out of time and I've forgotten the garnish. However, I'll make a separate upload for the garnish when I figure out how to get it off as well. So, hot tip, don't forget the wood. Pull the wood out of the oven.